Hello, my friends. I'm Holly Elissa and I'm coming to you from the lobby of the Grand Chennai Hotel in Chennai, India. Yes, I did it. I flew 24 hours or something very similar from Boston, Massachusetts through Doha to Chennai, and I arrived, oh, I don't know, I think 5 o'clock in the morning. And here it is a little bit, maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. A little crazy. And I'm glad to welcome you to two trauma survivors walking each other home. And here I am, one trauma survivor. And it feels a bit like trauma right there. My colleague and friend who was with me for months, Crystal, is taking a medical break. And very understandable for trauma survivors, yes. And I wish her all good things. And so I shall be broadcasting from India. I'm celebrating my 75th birthday a couple of years late. And I'm going to talk with you about facing fear. Because I wouldn't be here if I weren't facing fear. And what on earth does that mean? That means that I was raised on fear. I was not raised on love. I was raised on fear. The God with whom I was raised was not a loving God. It was not a generous God. It was a punitive, terrifying, I'll get you and I'll punish you. And you don't have a chance anyway because you're flawed from birth. A God. So who would like to hang out with that kind of God? And so at 77 now, I have been through, as many of you know, I've been through trauma. I'm an incest survivor from my narcissistic father who never was able to own that. Never. Gave him plenty of chances, but he wasn't able to. And I loved my mother, but she was psychotic. And so I'd look into her eyes and she would disappear. And that horrible but true research about children, it's a very loving phrase, but it's not for trauma survivors. Because what is said is children discover who we are by looking into the eyes of the people who love us. When I looked into the eyes of my father, I saw hatred, which I now know was self-hatred, but it was disdain. That was the one emotion he continuously showed toward me because he was a hurt person hurting people. My mother was so beautiful, and yet she was undereducated, didn't have much confidence at all. In fact, when she was perhaps in her early 20s, she took a picture of herself. She was being an interpretive dancer in the 1920s, perhaps 30s, early 30s. And there's a picture of this whole large orchestra with a female dancer, and there's no face on the dancer. And why? Because that is my mother, who didn't find herself attractive. It's a beautiful, beautiful woman who was just stunning, stunning. Didn't find herself appealing or attractive, so she snipped the photograph out. So what I'm saying here to you, and many of you know this already from my book, Happiness is Running Through the Streets to Find You, translating trauma's harsh legacy into healing. What I'm saying is this. I was not raised with love. I was raised on fear. I was not raised with confidence. I was raised on threat of death. I was not raised on hope. I was raised on dread. I was not raised on confidence. I was raised to feel subservient and inadequate about everything. So the grand piano over there, this hotel in Chennai. And why am I here? Because I have faced my fears. So this will be, I believe, a shorter program. I want to say about facing fears. Fears overwhelm. I've discovered that fear is a threshold. And if I run from it, I run from it. And then it is always a threshold. What do I mean by threshold? If I feel fear coming, how can I feel that? Well, my palms get sweaty. The hair on the back of my neck stands up. But also, I can feel, and I know you know this, a panic attack, which to me means I can't breathe. I feel people are crunching me. I'm about to be harm, maybe kill. That's what it feels like in my body because the amygdala gland is taking over and my executive function is dropping to functioning at only 5 to 10%. And so I can't breathe. I've got this panic attack coming. And why am I talking about this? Because I'm talking about facing fear. And the thing about facing fear is I have dreaded fear so much because it was such a horrible state. In fact, my understanding of hell was that if I persisted in this powerless state of panic and dread, that was hell. It was like Prometheus, the god who was condemned for sharing light with humans. And so what did they do with him? They placed him in the Caucasus Mountains and they put him on the side of the mountain and they exposed his liver every day during the daytime. And in would come these carrion birds and they would peck away at his liver. It must have been incredible pain. And then at night, with the darkness, you see, he was being punished for bringing light to humans. In the darkness, he would heal, only to wake up to the next morning of total shame and pain. And so that is the image, my friends. That is the image of what it's like to be a trauma survivor, motivated by, fed by, fueled by fear. And that's not what I want to do anymore. So what am I talking about here in Chennai, India? My friends, I'm by myself. I do not know a soul here. Have I met people? Of course. Have I befriended people? Of course. Was I terrified last night when my luggage didn't show up? No, I was sad because I know the consequences, as probably you do, of being traveling internationally and luggage getting lost. Oh my goodness. I didn't want that to happen, but I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited. And the luggage finally in the last hour showed up. So what is fear and what is it like for a trauma survivor to face her fear? I'm here because I have faced my fear. My mother was an agoraphobic when she was in her worst shape. And agora is the Greek word for gathering place. So agora, my mother couldn't leave the home because she felt always in danger if she left the home. Now, what is true for both her and me was that in the home, it is dangerous. And that's the most difficult thing about fear is when in the home, if the home is inside of me, do you have to ever feel that? But our home, if in the end is who I am, who's my soul, who I am inside myself, with whom am I going to live my whole life? With whom do I come to this earth and with whom do I leave this earth? I have been on a soul quest my whole life to reclaim my soul. The soul is the part of my being that is Carl Jung called the true self. For me, it means I am connected with something deeper. It means that when I have difficult decisions to make, I go calm and I go into that place and I ask for help. And guess what? Help always comes. And I didn't know that because I was terrified of myself because I was afraid of my response. I was going to have a panic attack. I was going to have to go running outside to be in the greenery because I couldn't bear to be inside where people could wound and harm me again. I was so terrified of fear that when Franklin Roosevelt, president of the United States, said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Honey, that's all. That's a lot to fear. That's what was motivating me. So if you're a trauma survivor, your relationship with fear is very special. And I invite you, if you feel free and safe now, to just ask yourself, what is my relationship with fear? And how do I deal with that relationship with fear? And one of the other topics I'll be talking about down the pike is self-medication. What I have learned to do is to self-medicate. So I can take a drink. I can take some wonderful, exquisite chocolate. I can get involved in being a very sexual person. I can accomplish and achieve things that people, particularly women, are not supposed to. I can run not a marathon, but I can run a significant distance, or at least I could. I can do all of these things to self-medicate and that takes me away from being controlled by fear. Self-medication in itself, in that term, implies that I'm medicating myself and I'm not a doctor. And I'm doing things to myself to calm down the fear. And so if I want to abate fear, I can drink. I can take medication. I can get involved with somebody. And for years, I confused altruism with codependency. I would be taking care of somebody else. Why? Because it was a high. All these things are highs. And what does a high do? It jumps me out of being controlled by the autonomic system where I'm just surviving. It jumps me back into feeling as if I'm living my life, as if I'm living my life. And so every time I would get an accomplishment, achieve an award, do something nobody else had done, and do something particularly that women were not supposed to be able to do, that was a high, but it didn't last. It was self-medication because it helped me break out of the shame and the fear and the self-hatred with which I was raised. So facing fear is reclaiming life. Facing fear means this to me in process. It means, and you've seen me do this with my head, where I turn around and I say, hello, fear. Although I see you, I feel you. Yes, I've been terrified of you. And today I greet you. I greet you and I say, what are you telling me? What do you need me to know? What do you need me to know? And often, right now, if I were talking about fear, I would say, fear is telling me that I need to get out of whatever danger I'm in and to become safe. Here I am, halfway around the world. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. And how did I get here? For decades, with white knuckle fear, I would get on airplanes, terrified. I would take medication to calm me down, and I would fly thousands and thousands of miles to places like Cambodia and Vietnam and Thailand and Laos and New Zealand and Iceland and Budapest and Morocco and all of these places because I wanted to believe I was free of fear. And I believed if I could face the fear and travel, that I would overcome the fear. What I have realized on this trip, my friends, is that I'm no longer afraid. I don't want to jinx it and say, oh my God, the fear's going to come back. I am no longer afraid. I landed in Chennai and I have no idea what's going on here. I landed in Chennai and I had this like eating grin. It's like, oh my God, I'm it. I made it to celebrate me. I'm here to celebrate my 75th birthday, which happened years ago, 2 years ago, in fact, almost, because it was during COVID and everything was locked down. What I wanted to talk with you about and invite you to consider is when you have turned around and greeted a fear and said, hello, old friend, I see you, I know you, you have been in charge of me. Let us now cooperate. And if you can't cooperate, I'll be glad to give you a break. Let you take a chance and go elsewhere because I have wanted to live my life now. That's what I want. So as I got on the plane in Boston, I wasn't afraid. No, I took care of myself. I purchased business class so I would get special care and attention because my little girl never got care and attention. She was dismissed, slapped, hit, kicked, unseen, beaten, raped. That's not care. That's horrible. And so what I did was I booked business class, which meant I was going to be fed. I was going to be given a comfortable blanket. I was going to be able to lie flat on a bed, not sit up rigidly. I was going to get assistance with lifting things. Not only that, but when I went through Doha, I had a very short connection. So what did I discover? I discovered the transit service. Now, what does that mean? That means some lovely people. Her name was Alicia, and she partnered with another wonderful guy. Oh, I will remember his name. I can see him, Michael. And Alicia and Michael. Alicia from Chennai and Michael from Kenya, not Kenya, Ghana. They met me, greeted me, walked me through the airport. Instead of going through customs, they literally walked me right to the front of the line. We're talking privilege and entitlement. And they were very, very polite, and they introduced me. And before I knew it, I was through customs. I was done. I didn't have to wait in these lines. I didn't have to get weary. These people helped me straight on through. And they took me to this lounge where I was served a meal and coffee. They walked me to the plane. They carried my bags on the plane. I mean, it was a wonderful privilege, which I deserved, which I needed. And then my last 3 hours, they were again serving me this wonderful Indian cuisine, and I kept falling asleep. And then even at the end, when my luggage appeared lost, I was still okay. I was not terrified. I was sad, but I was not terrified. Trust me, a feeling like sadness, I can deal with that. But what I could never deal with before was fear. Why? Because fear meant annihilation. Fear meant that the person I knew, Holly Elissa that I knew, she was going to be destroyed. I watched my mother when fear would overtake her, and she would disappear and sometimes go into this horrible split off from herself state where the sound she made when she was in that animalic place were so terrifying. And when I made the sound one time for my trauma therapist, I thought the energy coming out from me, having held all this in someone, I thought I was going to blow this 70-something-year-old man out the wall. I could see him. I shivered just to hear this. And this is what a child heard over and over again, this abysmal, stark moaning of a woman who was abused to her core. And that's what fear sounded like to me. And so when I say I turn around and face fear, I mean that. I mean that. Decades ago, I tried to befriend fear. I saw it as a crocodile that I couldn't really talk with, but I would say, come on, come be with me. I'll feed you, but I want to bet on you. And that was a beginning, but I still would be afraid of disappearing. For years, I was afraid, like my mother, I would disappear. And perhaps you're like me. Perhaps you have had grandmothers in the era when women who were allegedly hysterical were sent away to insane asylums. Both of my grandmothers, Louise and Adolorata, were sent to insane asylums in New York State, and they were both given shock treatment to take them out of their severe depression, which they both had earned, trust me. So why is this so exciting to me? Because I am waking up floor after floor after floor. I'm on a medium floor and I'm not afraid. I used to have a panic attack if I look straight down. I've come to find out that there's a reason for that. There's some of us who have a vision challenge where our vision doesn't correct well enough or quickly enough. If we look straight down, is to keep us from feeling we're going to die. We're going to I've always, for years, I felt my father is going to push me over the edge. That's what it felt like. So if I got anywhere near the edge, I felt, again, panic. Now, for years, what I did was I wouldn't even go above the 4th floor because I was terrified. Now, honey, I was in Panama. I was on the 15th floor. I was in Colombo, Sri Lanka, on the 18th floor. Here on Midway. And it's okay. And so let me begin to pull this together. I'm so glad to be with you. And I do want to remind you that if you are in the United States and at any point you feel you need help because the kinds of things that we're talking about that I'm saying might trigger fear, which can lead to despair. you can go directly to and just have this number available. The number is in almost every state, and it is called a warm line. So simply look up warm line trauma, warm line for trauma in your state, and you will find a number that is personed by people like us who are trauma survivors, and we can simply be present for each other, which is one of the major healing, soothing balms in Gilead that a trauma survivor needs. For example, the three things that I need are connection, truth telling, getting it out, getting the demons out from inside, telling the truth, and connecting with someone who sees me and doesn't judge me. In fact, who cares about me or loves me. And the third thing is hope. Hope, the thing with feathers that perches in my soul and sings the tune without words and never stops at all. So, my friends, as we continue together every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m., I shall talk with you about how I faced fear and said, hello, old friend. You are not in control. You are not in charge. You don't have to do this anymore. I can do this with you. I can acknowledge you. I can feel you. And I do not have to be devastated by you. When devastated by fear, I lost my soul. I cannot be myself, my true self, and lose my soul. And because I'm 77, I need to feel like the truth is I have a soul. And that when I come to the end of my life, as Thoreau said, I won't feel that I have not lived, but not only that, I'll feel like, okay, next adventure. Don't know anything about that next adventure, but I'm ready for it, because if I'm overwhelmed by fear, then I have to self-medicate. When I self-medicate, I disappear because I'm running for myself. And here I am in the Grand Chennai Hotel with the golden chandeliers and the piano with the marble floors. And I'm saying, hello, thank you. I am so glad to have faced my fear. And this was one of the things I said in my 20s when I was in a feminist consciousness raising group. A couple of us led a retreat. And the question at the retreat was, what would you like as your epitaph? What would you like said about you on your gravestone? I just read yesterday that Carl Jung's gravestone said, whether bidden or unbidden, the divine is present. I wanted my gravestone to say, Holly Elissa, she lived her life and she was at home in any place of earth, because I did not feel at home even in my own soul. Now today, in Chennai, yes, I feel it. And yes, I'm grateful. And this is all about being a trauma survivor, walking each other home. But Crystal, I hope you're feeling better. I hope you're healing. You really deserve the best. And to all of you that are with me, thank you. Get in touch. Get in touch. You can reach me through many, many means. But for example, Instant Messenger, Facebook, email, just go to just Google me and you'll get the information, because I'd love to be in touch. And so, my friends, thank you so much. I'm going to sign off and I'm going to say, it is possible to befriend fear. It is possible to no longer be dominated by fear. It is possible to reclaim your soul. It isn't easy. Hardest work I've ever done. Terrifying, sometimes impossible. And I thank all the people who have been with me, who have believed in me. And I thank my wild hair for getting dry in the midst of this. So, my friends, love you. And please, I invite you to consider, how have you faced, befriended, or how do you want to face and befriend the fears that drive you from yourself, which are insisted, ENCYST, insisted in us like a disease. from the trauma and we want to run from the trauma for the rest of our lives. I'm not running. Perhaps that's giving me the energy to be present today. Thank you. I'm going to say goodbye and give me feedback. Get in touch. Love you all. And here's to being fear, to befriending fear and not being terrified of it. Really well.